Welcome to the Unpacking It podcast with Bryce Johnson. It's a show that unpacks sports, faith, and life with intriguing guests from the sports and entertainment world. Enjoy inspiring conversations and thought-provoking interviews. You'll hear stories from people that will inspire, challenge, and encourage you. Now, from the Unpacking It studios in Charlotte, North Carolina, uniting sports fans everywhere, here is Bryce Johnson.
Welcome to the Unpacking It podcast, where we unpack sports, faith, and life with intriguing guests from the sports and entertainment world. I'm Bryce Johnson. Hope you're doing great today. Check out our website, unpackingit.com. In just a moment, we will be joined by former quarterback Craig Krenzel. You remember him from Ohio State. He won a national championship. Remember when they beat Miami? He was the guy. And he was also on the team with our buddy Nate Sally, who played at Ohio State. And so it'll be great to hear from Craig here on the show. He's actually now a business owner and seems to have a lot going on with his family and work life. And so he had a short NFL career, didn't quite work out, ended up having a major injury that really cut his career short. But today on the podcast, we talk about his faith journey, some key moments, but rather key people, and you'll hear about that in just a little bit. And then also, at the end of each podcast, at the end of each conversation, we'll come back on at the end and discuss some of the key takeaways from the interview. And so be sure to listen through the end, and I'll share a couple thoughts as we end our time together. So thanks for checking out the Unpacking It podcast. Appreciate the support. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe anywhere podcasts are found. Help us grow the podcast, spread the word, and also leave your reviews in Apple Podcasts as well. And if you haven't subscribed to our weekday email devotional, check out unpackingit.com/subscribe to subscribe to that as well. But right now, let's jump right in.
Intriguing guests and inspiring conversations. This is Unpacking It with Bryce Johnson.
And joining us now is former Ohio State quarterback Craig Krenzel. He played there from 2000 to 2003, was 24-2 as a starter, won a national championship, and was the Fiesta Bowl MVP twice. He also spent time in the NFL with the Chicago Bears and Cincinnati Bengals. Craig, it's great to have you on Unpacking It today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, it's Super Bowl week, and we're recording with just days leading up to the big game. And as I was reading about you, I read that a Super Bowl party at a local church when you were growing up ended up having a big impact on your life. So what's the story and what ended up happening at this Super Bowl party?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny story, kind of ironic. I was invited to this party, to the Super Bowl party, from one of my best friends in high school, Jamie Resmer. He was a point guard on a basketball team, played basketball at Michigan Tech, and his girlfriend's church was, they were having this Super Bowl party. And, I think the irony comes from a couple of things. One, sometimes best friends don't approve of the other best friend's girlfriend. And we may or may not have had that situation a little bit, but that's obviously not a very Jesus-like thing to say. But it was kind of funny how God works in our lives. And then the other part that I think is kind of humorous is, I grew up about an hour north of Detroit, so this party was obviously up in Michigan. The guys that came to give their testimonies, at the Super Bowl party, were Michigan football players. Ooh. So I grew up in Michigan and kind of had that first, little seed planted. I grew up in the Catholic Church, but never really had that personal come to faith moment. And as a child, like through my church experience, but that personal interaction with Christ, that seed was planted, at that Super Bowl party.
Wow.
I couldn't tell you the name of the church. What the gymnasium looked like that we were in. I remember the jumpsuits that the guys were wearing, but beyond that, I don't remember a whole ton of detail, believe it or not, except for just, what they had to share that night. It just kind of hit home with me.
Wow. That's so cool to hear. And so from that point on, then as you kind of look back at your faith journey, what were some of the other key moments, game-changing moments in your life that ultimately grew your faith and grew your understanding of who Jesus is and what he's done for all of us?
Yeah, no, for me, it's really, Bryce, it's not even moments. And I think most, if not everybody, most people, if not everybody, can relate to this. And it's not the moments that I look back and that mattered, it's the people.
Ooh, good.
And, there were a handful of people throughout, my walk and still are today that, that really, really just had an impact on my life in a way that I'll never forget. And one was when I came to Ohio State, my second year at Ohio State, a gentleman named Tom Rohde. Tom is the chaplain for the Ohio State football team to this day. At the time, he was, working through Campus Crusade, and Tom was just so instrumental. Just the epitome of persistence, from the sense that he was the guy that, wanted to get a meeting with me. And we had a quick conversation about, my faith, where I was. And then, it was one of those things that Tom kept saying, hey, what about this day? And of course, as a young college kid, I always had something, right? Whether it was a meeting, whether it was something for school, or whether I was tired, or maybe it was just an excuse. But, Tom was relentless. And I thank God every day that he was, because the relationship that grew from there with Tom and his wife, Julie, has just been so instrumental, so pivotal in my life, in my life. Just Tom was that rock through college, through the ups and downs, and really helping me grow spiritually. And then, you kind of fast forward a few years, we do some great things on the football field. I'm in a great place. I get drafted. My wife and I moved to Chicago, and it just kind of had for lack of a better term, it was probably my own fault for not getting plugged in. But, it's once again, you come into college as a freshman, everything's new and you're busy. And my rookie year in Chicago, I kind of had that same thing. Everything was new. I was trying to learn this new playbook. My wife and I had just gotten married. We moved to this new city. There's so many things going on in life that, I just kind of looked up and I was like, man, there would be times where I was like, man, I haven't gotten in the Word in 2 weeks. Haven't been to church. Haven't, and so personally, I was just a little bit of a, just a quiet period, a dark period, if you will. And that kind of translated, professionally on the field. I ended up starting a few games as a rookie. They always tell you God doesn't give you things you can't handle. Well, I can tell you I could not handle what I was supposed to do physically on a football field at that level. Yeah. So there was, just really, really interesting, challenging times. But as I look back now, God doesn't give us anything that we can't handle. And he was using those moments to grow me, to make me stronger. And I was released by the Chicago Bears after my rookie year and ended up in Cincinnati with the Bengals. And, the one thing that I remember kind of just sticking out from day one in Cincinnati was, God was alive in that locker room. I mean, couples Bible studies, the team Bible studies were, 20 guys deep. We had 10, 12, 15 guys at Bible study for the couple studies. And when I talk about the people, our team chaplain there, Ken and Carrie Moyer they're just amazing people. Player-wise, guys like Reggie Kelly, who's one of our tight ends, John Kitna, obviously. You want to talk about guys that live it, that were setting the example. Just phenomenal guys. And, one story that I'll never forget is I had a problem back then where, when I was on a football field between the lines or in the locker room, sometimes my language didn't necessarily meet who I wanted to be, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll never forget John Kitna coming up to me one day saying, hey, Krenz, I know we just met, but we've had some really good conversations. And, man, I got to ask you, what's with the words? What's with your language? And you want to talk about convicted?
Wow.
It was just great. And I'll never forget, we kind of sat there on the football field, and John said a quick prayer. Because I told him, I said, yeah, John, when I'm in this type of environment, sometimes it just slips. Wow. And but just that was an example of guys that were, they were living it. They were, real dudes that suffer from, different problems and challenges, but in God's eyes, the same sin that we all suffer from. And just to spend that time with those guys in Cincinnati, just another, period of my life that was so impactful on me, just growing and becoming stronger in my faith and my reliance on Jesus Christ.
Amen. Amen. Oh, man, what a great story, and I just love that perspective of focusing on the people that have come into our lives at key moments to help us grow. And so now, at this point in your life, are you able to be that guy for other people? How have you kind of maybe learned from the people that have entered into your life to now be that for someone else?
Well, for me, it comes down to just trying to live it every day. In terms of being that person, my number one job right now is to be that person to my children. My wife and I have been blessed with 4 children, oldest son in 8th grade, a 6th grade daughter, a 3rd grade son, and a 1st grade son. And, just trying to do our best in the hustle and bustle of raising 4 children in today's world and providing for them to show them the example of, what it looks like to live a life of faith, what it looks like to live a life of service. That's a challenge from time to time for all of us. So, for me, trying to be that person first and foremost is to my children. Anybody else that we can help out, that we can live that example, trying to teach my kids how to use their faith to help others and to set examples for others and to relate and empathize with others. To me, that's in my number one challenge right now is trying to be that example and that light for our kids, and then by them seeing us be that to as many as we can, so that hopefully they go on and as because our children are the first people that we have a direct impact every day to disciple to, and to teach them how to teach others also. Not just teach them to have faith, but to teach them, 2 Timothy 2:2, I believe, to teach them and equip them to be able to go out and teach others also.
It's awesome. I love it. Well, in talking about you being a dad of 4 kids, I'm curious, as someone who's a new dad, I've got a 6-month-old daughter, what are some lessons that you've maybe learned over the years, whether through mistakes or failures or through other people in your life just coming alongside you, in regards to being a father, some of the principles that you stick to and just some of the lessons that you've learned?
Well, the number one lesson I learned is that my kids are always watching. Your children are always watching. So, the example that we set, every word we speak, every action we take, every reaction and body language that we have. Our children are sponges, and the number one person that they're going to look to, or the 2 people they're going to look to in their lives are their parents. So that's just what an incredible opportunity. But at the same time, it's such an incredible responsibility. And, the one thing that I've learned that we try to do the best job we can as parents is when you work on to ground your children in faith, it becomes a lot easier to explain the challenges that they're going through from a worldly standpoint. Because, I had someone share this with me a long time ago, and they told me this, and I firmly believe it, that the number one challenge to being a good parent is going to be the parents of your child's friends. And, we've run into it on a number of occasions. I have a 9-year-old son who has friends that have cell phones. They got iPhones. And, in our house, that doesn't happen. My 6th grade, 11, almost 12-year-old daughter doesn't have a phone yet. She wants one. And, and they live in a world where a lot of times they're defined by things like, oh, she doesn't have a phone. as far as I know, my oldest boy got his phone in 7th grade, and it was kind of more on necessity because he was playing for the middle school sports teams. That way to communicate after practice got changed, started to become more important. And, with that, we set rules. We made him sign actually a contract with us and initial every rule that we reviewed with him. And my daughter will get the same thing. And, all of our kids will get the same thing. But at the same time, they do start to have folks view them because they don't have the phone or they're not on this form of social media just because it's not something we believe they need or need yet. And explaining those things to them. We're all extremely blessed. My family is incredibly blessed and the times that we've had to share together and some of the trips that we've taken together and trying to relate that to a teenager or a preteen or a 9-year-old that what you're upset about is so meaningless and insignificant, not only in the grand scheme of life from an eternity standpoint, but even in your lifetime on earth. You're going to realize that, yeah, you didn't have a phone at 10 years old, and you know what? It didn't matter. And in fact, the reason your mom and I believe this is because someday you're going to see you're a better person for it. Man. And someday, just like I did with my father and mother, someday you're going to wake up when you're 20, whatever years old and say, oh my gosh, mom and dad were actually pretty cool. Mom and dad they actually did care about us. And, just knowing that, I'm going to be entering a period of my daughter's life where, if things hold true to other fathers that I've spoken to, it's a challenging time. Those middle school, high school years are incredibly challenging for girls. And, I just got to make sure that she knows every single day, regardless of what's going on, that I love you. Sweetheart, dad loves you. And everything I do and say, and your mom and I do and say, it's out of love, and someday you'll understand. And I understand that you don't get it right now.
That's right.
Just trying to foster that culture of love and friendship in our house. One of the things that I pray for most is that 30 years from now that my 4 children are all still, that they're really good friends and that they're still really engaged in each other's lives, no matter where they live, no matter what they got going on. That they have that relationship, and that's a building block that we're trying to set right now.
It matters because I've got 2 brothers myself, and so I can relate to that and the value of that, and it's key. So that's cool to hear that you're trying to establish that kind of mentality and culture in your own house, which is encouraging. Well, Craig, awesome fatherly advice. Really appreciate that. That was excellent. And as we wrap things up, we started talking about the Super Bowl. We'll finish talking about the Super Bowl. Do you have a favorite in the game? What's your perspective on the Super Bowl coming up?
My perspective is that I think it's going to be a really good football game. I think last year we had a little bit of a sleeper for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The 2 years prior, we had what I thought were incredibly entertaining games. All involving the New England Patriots, obviously with the Falcons and the Rams. When Patriots wins, those are kind of sleepers. And then in the middle there, you got Philly coming in with the Super Bowl victory and Nick Foles catching touchdown passes and all that kind of stuff. So when you really look at the last 3, 4, 5 Super Bowls, we had some really good games. Last year I thought was kind of from an excitement standpoint, that is kind of a dud. This year I don't think we're going to have that. I think there's too many playmakers on that field. And you love watching strength against strength. Mm. And I am excited to see what this Niners defense can do against Patrick Mahomes in that offense. Because what makes it an intriguing matchup to me is the pressure that the Niners can put on, with just 3 or 4 guys, because they're so incredibly talented up front on defense. And when you go against a team like the Chiefs, you got to be able to put pressure on and still cover, because Patrick Mahomes can move around, he can make you miss, and he can pick you apart, with the incredible talent that he has. So, I think it's going to be a great matchup to watch. How much pressure can the Niners get up front and still play 7 or 8 in coverage and disrupt routes and create that disruption in timing for Mahomes and company? I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I can't wait, and I'm with you. As long as we don't see as many punts as we did last year in the Super Bowl, we'll be in good shape, and I don't think it should be that way. So, we'll really appreciate you being on the show today, and thanks for sharing, and wish you the best, and hope we can stay in touch. So thanks for joining us today on Unpacking It.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. There's Craig Krenzel, former Ohio State quarterback, joining us here on Unpacking It.
Intriguing guests and inspiring conversations. This is Unpacking It with Bryce Johnson.
I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. Craig Krenzel. That was great. Really appreciate his thoughts on fatherhood especially. That was very, very valuable, and hope any dads listening today were able to take away some nuggets from that conversation. And each week here on the podcast, we'll kind of come back in studio and recap the interview a little bit and share a couple takeaways from the conversation. And two things stood out to me in what he said. And there's an understanding or a saying or a phrase that is used in Christian circles, and that is that God doesn't give us more than we can handle. And I think it's a somewhat of a complicated issue, and I don't think it's always as simple as that. And I'm not saying Craig was wrong in what he said or anything like that. I just think it's worth unpacking a little bit more, because the truth is we are weak, and there are many things that we cannot do in our own strength. And I think Craig was talking about that. He was struggling in Chicago. And so, yeah, we're going to experience aspects of life, challenges in life that are beyond what we're capable of handling on our own. And we need help. We need a way out, and we need God's strength to meet us in that place to get us through the tough times. And, the verse of when we are weak, he is strong. So it's in that weakness that God shines through, his strength shines through. And so I don't think God's going to allow us to, get to these places where we're so overwhelmed and taken out and there's no way or no hope or no help available to us. So, God doesn't give us more than we can handle. Because he's going to come in and he's going to allow us to handle it, and he's going to give us what we need to handle it. So it's not that it's wrong, but it's in saying that, it's just, I think it's always worth thinking a little bit deeper about what that means. And so I think in some ways it gives us hope in the midst of those struggles to say, yeah, this isn't going to get so bad that I'm not going to be able to get out, or I'm not going to be able to get through this, because in Christ I can get through. And ultimately, I know that eternity is taken care of if we have placed our trust in Jesus, and so we can rest and have peace in that, have hope in that, and so these are just temporary things that we experience here on earth. Some are very difficult to the extreme, and they're so hard, and it takes everything out of us. But even in that, God can fill us with his power and strength. And so I hope that's encouraging, and again, not taking away anything of what Craig said, just sort of taking it a step further to think a little bit more about. So we'd love to know your thoughts on that topic, and if you have any responses or questions surrounding that, just something that I wrestle with myself when I hear that saying. The other takeaway from the conversation was how I asked him, what are the key moments in your life? And I love his response. It was about key people. And that is the truth, because when I look back at my life, there have been key people that God has placed in my life for a season, for a purpose. Some have been lifelong friends or mentors. Some were temporary for, a semester in college, or for a year in high school, or whatever it was. And that is a great aspect of the faith journey to consider. Who are those people that have truly impacted me? Do they know that? Have we thanked them? And then are we going to be that for someone else, starting with our family, for our kids, and then impacting others to be that key person in someone's life, to walk alongside them in their journey, especially in the early stages, if they're, new to Jesus and don't quite understand, what it really looks like to follow him, to be able to provide wisdom for them and to encourage them along the path. So those are my big takeaways. Would love to know yours. You can send me an email, Bryce@unpackingit.com, Bryce@unpackingit.com. thanks for checking out today's Unpacking It podcast. Hope you listen to more. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe, and we'll drop one or two of these interviews each week. We also have a Monday kind of weekend recap show that's a lot of fun too, so check that out as well. And you can always subscribe to our weekday email devotional by going to unpackingit.com/subscribe, and encourage you to check that out. Well, I'm Bryce Johnson. I'm a sports fan who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sins. He was resurrected, and by faith, I have been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Unpacking It podcast.
For more information about the show, our events, and other resources, visit unpackingit.com. That's unpackinit.com. We hope you are encouraged, inspired, and challenged by what you heard today. To support our show and Unpacking It Ministries with a financial gift, visit unpackingit.com/donate. We look forward to unpacking sports, faith, and life with you again next week.